It's time for the unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Gary Murdoch and Josh McCuistion. Eddie Radovich.
Oh my God, we're almost to signing day. That's right. Here we are on the end of January. Signing day coming up on February 1st on a Wednesday. So we're a week away, maybe a little shorter than that if you're listening, depending on when you're listening. So want to welcome in the whole gang is here once again. Josh McCuistion joins us from his home base. Eddie Radovich and Joe DuVall in studio. And boys, welcome to our pre-signing day unofficial 40 podcast.
It's like we're 7 days away. You can start the final countdown, and I'm sure that this will be a podcast that a lot of people will want to listen to.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't open with bare naked ladies.
I don't know why people would be interested right now.
Yeah, there's not much going on. OU's class is secured, isn't it, Josh?
Well, do you guys remember a month ago we were talking about how this was going to be very formulaic and it was all just going to kind of go to plan? Almost nothing has gone to plan over the next 2 weeks. I guess, and stupid for me to even think that it would go that way, but it's signing day. Crazy stuff just happens. I don't know why drama just becomes the way that is, but that's what we're looking at with Jacob Phillips and obviously Oklahoma trying to close some other positions.
Well, let's start with Jacob Phillips. Obviously, a lot of things flying around since his official visit, even during his official visit. I mean, I think we went from last week's podcast was Josh feeling very confident that he knew what was going on, what was happening in every moment of Jacob Phillips' recruitment. Josh, how much has your opinion changed since our podcast a week ago?
You know, it's changed quite a bit, and I think I guess I feel, in some ways, I feel a little vindicated about my opinion last week, but at the same time, as time has passed, I was wrong. And I say that because talking to Woody Womack, who has talked, to people and has talked with me, we've had a lot of conversations. Woody talked with Jacob, and Jacob said it was better than I expected at LSU, kind of giving the indication that he thought he was just kind of going down there and going to see things and then going to come home and say, hey, I'm going to Oklahoma. I think LSU turned his head a little bit. I think, and I've said it all week, I think the longer this goes without him announcing anything, the better it is for Oklahoma. If he'll get to that Friday in-home visit, when I think Tim Kish will be there, Kerry Cooks, I think Oklahoma will roll out the Army for him next Friday. Obviously, Bob Stoops can't be there because he's already made his one in-home visit. But other than that, I think Oklahoma will roll out in huge force for Jacob Phillips and try to close that down and have it done so that they can focus on closing guys. And does Jacob Phillips help you with Marvin Wilson, who really liked his in-home visit? There's a lot of ways that can go. But I think if Oklahoma gets to Friday, can go in home, and he's still a part of the, I guess officially still a part of the class, then Oklahoma has a lot of reason to feel good.
Josh, take us through, I think people will be interested on what that process is like for the coaches. This last week, they got 5-star guys committed that they're trying to nail down. They got other 5-star guys they're trying to get committed, trying to swing maybe that they're leaning other places. What is this last week like in those Oklahoma coaches' offices?
Well, it's chaotic. I mean, you understand some of that, Joe, with your time, spent in the athletic department. But, I mean, there is just there's no time for anything because, I mean, not only are they working 2017, they're working 2018. I mean, we just saw a tweet where Calvin Thibodeau's in the St. Louis area recruiting 2018 defensive linemen where he's got 3 or 4 offers out to guys in that city. So
we saw a 2020 offer this week.
Basketball.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's just there's recruiting and, Kerry, you're with me. You can remember when there was a period after signing day when everybody just got to exhale and kind of catch their breath. And then about, late April, early May, we all got rolling again. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So not only is Oklahoma trying to close in this last week, they're scheduling going out, to try to start 2018 and really get it rolling where we've seen probably 20 offers go out this week.
I remember when we used to have a break.
Breathing's for losers. There is no time to breathe.
Josh, you brought up Marvin Wilson in there. Is there real smoke there? What should Oklahoma fans be feeling when it comes to Marvin Wilson? Any kind of optimism, tepid optimism there?
I would call it a puncher's chance. I don't think there's any question that he really, really liked his in-home visit. Talking to some people that I know at Episcopal, talking to some people around Marvin. Now, I won't say I have not had a chance to sit down with Marvin. This has been kind of a weird week with him, but I do get the feeling that he really, really was impressed with what OU pitched him. You know, everybody, of course, saw the picture with all the coaches in his jersey and all that. I mean, Oklahoma made a spectacle of that in-home, which is not something we've always seen from OU. I thought it was really a strong move by them. But I think Oklahoma knew going in, this is probably unlikely, but what's it hurt? We're going to give it our best shot. We're going to throw everything out there on the table, and whatever happens, happens. Because it's not like recruiting Marvin Wilson is taking away from recruiting another player. This is their only interior defensive lineman, I guess true interior defensive lineman that they're really looking at. They're looking at some defensive ends and some other guys in other roles, but this wasn't taking away from that effort. So they went in, threw everything they had at it, and if it happens, it happens, and if not, they're no worse for it. So I think Oklahoma fans should probably expect him to go to LSU. I think there's an outside shot for Ohio State, maybe Florida State. But Oklahoma is, after LSU, I think you throw them up in the air. I think any of them are a possibility. But I think it's LSU, and then I think Ohio State, Florida State, and Oklahoma all have a shot, I guess you'd say.
It's interesting looking at the two different, I guess, variances of the recruitment of Jacob Phillips and the recruitment of Marvin Wilson, just in that, I would think that for Oklahoma fans, and I think that you kind of hit on this in the Wednesday notes section on the board, Josh, was just the simple fact that Jacob Phillips is committed to Oklahoma. I mean, isn't there a compare contrast type thing that we can do in looking at those two recruitments, and maybe the bigger uphill battle is with Marvin Wilson, but at the same time you have a guy that's already committed in Jacob Phillips, and would that be tougher to overcome if it was, I guess, the other way around?
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think when you're looking at it with regard to how different the two recruitments are, when you talk about a guy that philosophically fits Oklahoma, Jacob Phillips is that guy. He's a no-nonsense guy. He doesn't need all the frills. He's not one that's going to get caught up in a lot of the other stuff that doesn't matter. Jacob is very much focused on what's going to make me better, what's going to, the very basic details of his recruitment. Marvin, and I'm not saying Marvin's not, but Marvin is a guy that he likes the attention. He likes being in the middle of all this stuff. If he didn't, Marvin could have announced for probably 4 months now. Not to say that he's made his decision, but I think there's no question that guys that run out to signing day, they know before signing day. I'll never buy I made my decision last night stuff. No, you didn't. You've known for a little while. So if Marvin wasn't interested in that, I think he could have done this. But that, that's not to say that Marvin's a bad guy, but I do think, and you mentioned it from Wednesday notes, that I think the fact that Jacob is in OU's camp is a huge card for OU right now, because not only does he have that mindset of I'm going to OU, and he's had that on his mind for months now, but he also has, I'm going to have to call OU and say I'm not coming. And that's for a kid like Jacob, who's very, like I said, very much about business and very much someone who wants to be a man of his word and really takes these things seriously. That's really tough for him to get his head around, in my opinion. So I think it helps OU. And again, I keep saying, I think Jacob wants to be at OU. That is the impression that I have. But at the same time, I think there are some people around him that really want him to look at LSU. And I think there is some debate of how much they want him to be at LSU. Are they going to push him that direction? Or is it just a matter of, hey, take a look, we want you to give this some serious consideration?
I would think that phone call, you say that the phone call to the coaches would be tough. I think that phone call to Robert Barnes or to Creed Humphrey or whoever, Levi Draper, would be even tougher. I don't know if you could that's almost going into the KD Russ bullshit way that KD left Oklahoma City was just the text that he sent Russell Westbrook. And I don't know. I think that maybe I think that we've given a lot of credence to that hump was going to be tough to overcome for Jacob Phillips, and maybe that ends up being the last hurdle that ends up getting Jacob Phillips to stay and attend Oklahoma.
You both made multiple points of why this thing is so strange to me. Josh said it on last week's podcast. I thought it was a great point that Jacob initially said he wanted to take all 5 visits the first 5 weeks, get it over with. He commits to Oklahoma. He seems to really like Oklahoma. He seems to wants to be at Oklahoma. He enjoys his classmates. And yet this LSU visit pops up right at the end, and it doesn't seem like anybody has a great reason why. I mean, can someone give me the reason why? It feels like there's nothing concrete. It's all a lot of mystery out there. Why is Jacob visiting LSU at this point?
I think that you look at especially I think if you're Oklahoma, you can play it in the fact that they offered him a year before LSU did. They've been with him for the longest time, and I think that you can also probably try and sell the fact that if you're OU that, I don't know. I guess you sell the fact that you've been with this guy for so long. Why would I don't know. It just feels like he was kind of the flavor of the week after that All-American stuff, and then LSU was like, okay, yeah, we probably need to go get him. Or Coach O, somebody finally broke down what football was, and he was like, yeah, I guess we need to go get him.
I read that Mike Farrell piece that we have on the board that everybody loves. But I
getting overwhelming support from the Sooner community right now.
I'm reading that thing, and I was looking in there. I was genuinely like, all right, where's this information? Why is Jacob going to LSU? Where's this tie? And it's just not in there.
It's opinion.
It's nothing. It's just, but there's nothing anywhere. I can't find it anywhere other than you hear SEC and you hear defense, but I can't find that connection between Jacob and LSU. I just don't understand where it came from. I don't. It's all very confusing to me because that's not the kid that you would have expected that to come from. Because he wanted this to be over with, done. Is it just? I mean, am I just blown in the wind here about the SEC? Am I crazy? I think is that not something that it has to do with? It's just this SEC.
Look, it's become this national narrative that people, because they don't have any thoughts of their own, just keep repeating over and over. And I'm not trying to rip on Mike Farrell. And look. It is true. You look at the NFL. I looked at the list because I had people texting me today all pissed off about this stuff. I said, here's LSU's list. And OU has Dom Alexander and Corey Nelson in the NFL right now as linebackers. LSU, I don't have the list in front of me, but I know they're – I mean, it's not like you think of LSU and you think, oh, that's a linebacker place. You think that's where defensive tackles go.
Yeah.
But not so much linebackers. And I just think, yeah, it's an opinion. It's an opinion that the SEC it's a false opinion based on what we saw in the bowl season because the SEC sucked. The other thing is we saw OU play Auburn. We saw OU wear down Auburn's defense, and I would say Auburn's defense was better than LSU's this year.
I think they were. Statistically,
they were top 20 before they played. I didn't see what they finished. But yeah, LSU had a rough season this year.
And the SEC was statistically one of the worst conferences in the bowl season defensively. They gave up, on average, close to the most points of any other conference in the country. We're going a little off topic here, but I guess I don't is that just the only pool? Is that from Jacob himself? Oh, the SEC, the lure of LSU, because he had an opportunity to go to Alabama. He chose Oklahoma over Alabama. The LSU stuff, it just baffles me. It baffles me where it came from and why this is latched on to Jacob and why this is the decision here.
Look, I'll say this: if I had a sales pitch to Jacob, it would probably be something more like, "Look, you didn't go to Alabama. If you go to LSU, people are going to say, well, you didn't go to Alabama because they didn't want you. Why not just set your own course and say, I'm going to go to Oklahoma, where people say the defense sucks." And I'm going to be one of the best linebackers in the country there. And I'm going to make my own mark. Not in the SEC where everybody says you're just a product of the system. You're going to, you play defense, you go play defense somewhere with all these other defensive guys, and you're just going to get in the NFL. People get into the NFL from anywhere. I mean,
yeah.
I'm watching these games over the weekend. I didn't see a ton of, it's not like every player on defense, especially the guys that stood, that's not like they were all from the SEC.
No. And I will say
Clay Matthews is not from the SEC. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league.
I will say LSU finished 10th in total defense this year.
Didn't Dwight Freeney go to Syracuse?
Auburn finished 28th. So,
okay, say that again.
LSU finished 10th in total defense. Auburn finished 28th. No, look at the Senior Bowl stuff. I think yesterday, even though I think he's a complete moron, Kiper's top 4 guys were from non-Power 5 schools down at the Senior Bowl yesterday in Mobile. So. I think a lot of the time that it kind of gets built into this narrative, and it's going to take Oklahoma or somebody to start nabbing a guy like Jacob Phillips to change that narrative. Don't you think, Josh?
Well, yeah, guys. I mean, and just to kind of further your point, maybe the best young linebacker in the NFL is from Buffalo.
Yep.
I mean,
Mack.
Khalil Mack's a monster. And so, I mean, if you have talent, you have talent. That's just, it's one of these things where, and I think people think it's got something to do with the SEC. It's got something to do with the SEC is the best recruiting talent hotbed in the country. Let
me interrupt you. Here's the asinineness of all, is that one of the most recognized offensive players in the NFL is Odell Beckham Jr., who comes from one of the most crap offenses in college football.
Yeah, couldn't get 1,000 yards at LSU.
Look at O.J. Howard. Guy might end up a top 10 pick, and nobody knew who the hell he was until the championship games the last 2 years.
Except for recruiting guys.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Josh tweeted it, I think, yesterday during the rewatching the Senior Bowl stuff.
Yeah.
It's amazing when, he has those big catches against, who was it, Washington in the semifinal game? Or no, it was the championship game against Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Back-to-back years. And everybody's like, oh, this guy must be really good. And then all this, that was my phone. I screwed up.
Way to go, vibrate guy.
It might be my contacts though.
Well, to be fair, you destroyed your own point, so you slowed yourself down.
Yeah.
O.J. Howard looking like a badass.
Oh yeah, and he's just a badass, and then we're like, yeah, we saw this when he was 17 and he was mauling dudes all the time down in Atlanta at the 5-star when we saw him. So
because everybody's like, why the hell are you going to Alabama?
Yeah.
Go to Miami or somewhere where Jimmy Graham at least came from.
Mm-hmm. Well, it feeds your point, though. Didn't even matter. Didn't even matter at all. He played for an offense that didn't suit him, and he's going to be a top 10 pick.
I'm scrolling through Pro Football Focus's top defenders. I'm seeing Khalil Mack from Buffalo, Brandon Graham from Michigan. I'm seeing Malcolm Butler, who he went to what did he go, Texas A&M Corpus Christi or something?
Malcolm Butler was South. It wasn't South Alabama, I don't think.
Wasn't a big school, I'll tell you that.
No, it was. They've been talking about it. As a huge Pats fan for the Super Bowl, I should know this.
Chris Harris went to Kansas.
Hell,
also
that one
Okie
guy,
Preps.
is it Byron Thomas from Dallas that was from Connecticut?
West Alabama.
I mean, he's
Alcorn
a
State.
badass young player. He didn't play in the SEC.
Man, the point is, if you're that
Maurice
good,
Claiborne is the worst player in the Dallas secondary, and he was an All-American coming out of LSU.
I wonder if LSU can make that recruiting pitch. Come here, and you can suck and still get picked in the top 10.
Not a bad pitch, actually.
The thing is, I mean, if you want to make this case, at LSU, if we're talking about Jacob Phillips, the safety, okay, I can kind of get it. You look at what LSU's done at defensive back. Tyrann Mathieu, Jamal Adams is going to be a top 10 pick this year.
Eric Reed.
Yeah, Morris Claiborne, Eric Reed. You go down the list. I mean, they have churned out DBs.
Jalen Adams is getting to leave early.
Yeah.
At linebacker, though, I mean, really, in the last 6 years, they've got one first-round pick, and that's Barkevius Mingo, who was an elite national recruit. I mean, that's not – you didn't make him into something he wasn't. I mean, that guy was really talented, and he made plays while he was there. Like I said, I don't want this to turn into, well, it's just crazy, because, I mean, I do understand some of the narrative of LSU. I do. But at the same time – I think it becomes bigger than it really is. It becomes, well, these guys, it's because they went to the SEC. Well, it's because they're really, really talented. I mean,
I'll tell you this, Reuben Foster was one of the biggest high school kids I've ever seen at linebacker that went to Alabama. Alabama actually had to get him to lose weight to have a great year like he had this past year. They thought he was carrying too much weight. But that kid was going to be good no matter where he went. He could have gone to the WAC, and he would have been fantastic.
Exactly.
He might have killed somebody in the WAC. He might have actually killed a player in the WAC.
Would have looked like Ronell Lewis at Dewar.
He probably would have made him quarterback in the WAC.
Well, I mean, did Leonard Fournette become great because he went to LSU? No, Leonard Fournette would have been a monster at Boise State. I mean, that's guys that are just physically gifted are physically gifted. It has nothing to do with any of that. Now there are missed evaluations by coaches and by guys like myself. I mean, that happens all the time, but that doesn't mean that you're a better player because you went to the SEC. You were just a talented guy and you went to the SEC and they put you in a system that worked.
Let's face it. I mean, a lot of it is, like I said before, it is just dumbed down narrative that keeps getting put back and regurgitated by people that don't really think that much about. I mean, let's face it, most national people don't pay that much attention to college football. And they just repeat the same crap that they hear over and over again. Now, like, if you hear Herb Street saying this, which you never will, like, then maybe there's something to it. But I'd say right now the Big Ten can claim to have just as much speed, just as much talent on defense as the SEC does. I mean, Ohio State bows down to nobody athletically. And Clemson, they're not in the SEC. They can handle themselves just fine.
Florida State's right up there too. And I think Oklahoma, we'll see, but if they can get some defensive line play, they could be up in that, in that discussion a little bit with Caleb Kelly coming on. They're getting closer. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think I sat here, months ago after the Ohio State game saying that they weren't, when in reality I, was definitely probably wrong on that. They're getting closer.
I think you got guys like Neville Gallimore coming. I mean, Neville Gallimore is an NFL kind of guy if it goes to plan. So there's reason for hope. I don't think there's any question that what LSU is using on Oklahoma is not really about the NFL production. It's about what's going to be in front of you. We're going to have Marvin Wilson. We're going to have Tyler Shelvin. We're going to have Davin Godchow. They're going to have all these guys, and Oklahoma can say, well, we've got Neville, and we've got Amani Bledsoe that was a highly recruited kid, but he won't play till mid-season. It's just a matter of perception, and Oklahoma is going to have to fight that a little bit because as good a player as Matt Romar is, I doubt Jacob Phillips understands it. I doubt that he thinks, oh, yeah, Matt Romar, that's a possible NFL guy if he could ever stay healthy.
Or the possibility of Q Overton being a really good player.
Exactly. Yeah, he's going to – he didn't ever see Q Overton play. There's no question. So Oklahoma's got to kind of fight that battle as much as anything because, don't get me wrong, LSU has a ton of talent on their defensive line, and as a linebacker, that's something you want. I get that argument.
How do you think they are going about doing that as far as the coaches? How do you think that if – I guess
their recruiting pitch kind of?
Yeah, kind of their what is their pitch right now to Jacob Phillips, and especially what's your pitch if you're going in on Friday or Thursday, and what are you saying to him?
I've said it all along. I think you've got to be really careful about attacking LSU because clearly there's interest there, and I think when you get into that, there's two ways that can go, and one can be really good, and one can turn the kid off. Because if you're coming off defensive and we're worried about them, and we're not going to, it's a lot like politics. Like a lot of people are going to get turned off, and I think, in my opinion, Jacob is one of those kind of people. If you start talking bad about someone that they have affinity for, and clearly to whatever level, Jacob has affinity for LSU and Dave Aranda and that whole thing. So you've got to be mindful of LSU stinks and they're feeding you lies and that kind of thing. I go in there and I ask Jacob, what are your questions? What are your concerns? And then I answer them, and I can be a little more aggressive in those because I'm not coming after LSU. I'm answering his questions. I'm talking about what he wants to know about. And then at the end, just again, like politics, you pivot. Well, I want you to think about your relationship with Coach Kish, who's been with you from day one. He offered you 3 years ago. He loves you. You're his guy. He wants to build the defense around you. Or Mike Stoops wants to build the defense around you.
I think Tim Kish should just start crying, just weeping as that pitch is going on.
Takes out his wallet.
Yeah.
Jacob, these are my grandchildren. They're not going to be able to
And he's got like a superimposed picture of Jacob like next to him.
Yeah.
Like
they're not going to be able to eat if you don't come here.
He needs to go passive-aggressive mother. Go on. Go to LSU. I only offered you a year earlier, but go on.
Jacob, this is a termination notice I was just served. It says if you don't come back with Jacob, don't come back to Norman.
I'd be such a bad coach. I'd be throwing everybody under the bus.
You would be.
A part of the LSU program.
But here's the thing, and I think
I'd be
Oklahoma
planting meth down there.
Oklahoma,
that's what we should hear is what's Eddie's pitch? If he's OU, how fire and brimstone do you go?
His
Eddie?
pitch is the Louisiana chili suck. Don't go there.
There's a lot of F words.
Here's what you got to realize about OU, and I think what you're saying is right on, Josh, about the negative recruiting or taking the negative approach.
Yep.
OU established this as kind of the benchmark before this class, and Josh can back me up on this. When they started hauling out all the trophies and making the focus, their championships, Bob has kind of always been, we're not going to go negative. Like, no matter who they've recruited, and they've had a lot of these LSU battles. They've had a lot of battles against the SEC over the years, Texas, A&M, whatever. I think they've always tried to focus on, look, this is what we do. We win games. We play for championships. We produce All-Americans. We put guys in the NFL. They focus on what they do well, which is smart. And I think somewhere along the line, they were getting frustrated. I'd say, Josh, probably like 3 years ago, the staff was getting really frustrated because they felt like their pitch was no longer working, or the kids didn't care about winning. Remember, it was about the whole Baylor and all the alt uniforms and Oregon, and kids seemed to be like they cared more about the flash than they did about the results on the field. And that's when I think OU kind of, and credit Jerry Montgomery, he's one of the first guys when he started, there's levels to this, the old Drake stuff.
Mm-hmm. Just wait on it.
Through Twitter. And all of a sudden, OU put a lot of marketing muscle behind that, getting that message out there of, we win championships at Oklahoma. This is what we do. This is what we're about. We're not about, and they didn't say it specifically. They never said, we're not about, 87 different uniform combinations. We're not going to have the flashiest locker room, or we're not going to have DJs on our, practice field every day. They made a conscious effort to say, this is what we're about. This is what we want you to pay attention to, because nobody else or very few other programs can offer you what we're offering you, which is a chance to win, a chance to get recognized individually, a chance to go to the NFL. So I don't think they're going to go into LSU at all and say, don't go there because this, and this. They're just going to try and reinforce why they think he picked, why he picked OU in the first place, and why they think he should stay with them.
It helps also these last couple of years, finishing, fifth in the country, making the college football playoff. That gets your name recognition and your clout back up, because that
2 Heisman Trophy finalists.
A few years ago, those kids that were coming through were all of a sudden kids that probably didn't remember the year 2000, probably didn't remember when Bob Stoops had won a national title. Now it's starting to get back in the consciousness of people that, oh yeah, this is a really good program. This is a blue blood program. I think the problem for Oklahoma, I think they have done a really good job of changing kind of their messaging and how they package this stuff. And I remember he had a website, bobstoops.com, a few years ago that really kind of started that whole thing off, and it was a really well done site. But when you that works well regionally with the Big 12, Oklahoma should be able to dominate recruiting with that stuff. The problem is when you're in a matchup with Alabama or LSU or somebody like that, how do you differentiate yourself if you're Oklahoma? Because they win championships too. And so I think that's where guys like Lincoln Riley have really helped, guys like Jerry Montgomery helped before, where Oklahoma's been able to kind of ascend to that next level beyond just pointing to their championships and trophy case.
Well, if you're talking about anybody besides Alabama, you just ask them, do you want to win 10 games or do you want to win 7 or 8 games and have a nice bowl game and be done by December 25th?
Well, the other thing you say is, look, Bob Stoops has been here for 18 years.
Yeah.
He's not going anywhere. He's got a track record of winning, like you said. He was at the college football playoff 2 years ago, winning the Sugar Bowl a year ago. Got your Heisman, finalist quarterback. You can say you have the Heisman Trophy favorite based on Bovada.
Yeah.
That came out last week or this week. So, I mean, what's a better bet, that you're going to be playing for a national championship at Oklahoma next year or LSU? I think that's all you have to say.
Don't even have to answer it.
Really, I mean, for the foreseeable future, I don't even care. I mean, Baker Mayfield obviously is a huge loss for OU next year, but at what point are you like, yep, LSU's getting past Alabama? It's not even that I think necessarily that 2 years from now maybe LSU couldn't be just as good as Oklahoma. OU doesn't have to go through Alabama to get there.
Yeah, and Oklahoma's biggest challenger the last few years, Baylor, is nothing. So it becomes now a rebuilding Texas and Oklahoma State.
Not to mention you can eat food without all this crap on it.
Tony Sasheries!
I wonder if the coaching staff behind closed doors has to be a little pissed off that they're almost getting, not out-recruited, but they might get beat by a guy that has been fired from multiple jobs and is 26 and 28 overall as a head coach.
Oh, I mean, there's always those frustrations, and I'm sure there's plenty of people on staff that think that the only reason this is happening because there's some bag man behind it.
There might be.
I mean, that's
maybe
not unheard of.
Especially at that school.
The whole thing about bagmen is like, that's become such a thing the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, it kind of started. Did it start with Cam Newton?
Well, it became like, okay, we finally proved it with Cam Newton, but that's been out there forever. I can't even remember who was the receiver from like Brenham, Texas. Josh, do you remember?
Yeah, the big long kid.
Yeah.
What was his name? Went to LSU. And I remember him specifically because he was at a Nike camp, and Ryan Broyles is the guy who shut him down. Ryan Broyles played corner that day at the Nike camp and really did a nice job with that kid, and that's kind of when he started to jump up in a lot of people's eyes. He was a 5-star kid. I'll have to look that up. Dadgum, that's going to drive me crazy, Kerry.
Wasn't Jarrett Lee, was it?
No, that was the quarterback who also did go to LSU that year.
He was from Brenham, too. God dang it.
Was it Caleb Jones? No, it wasn't Caleb Jones, was it?
No. Terrence Tolliver.
No.
It was Terrence Tolliver.
That's exactly who it was. Yep.
Yeah,
I remember him picking LSU, and I distinctly remember, I'm not going to say who it was, but I can remember someone who was legitimate telling me that they can't compete with the Bagmen at LSU.
Just straight up, he costs too much.
Straight up, he's getting paid.
That is definitely the side of recruiting that doesn't get talked enough about.
I haven't heard as much since he's been in Alabama, but when he was at LSU, the term Slick Nick was used a lot. That was something, and it was not a term of his, I guess, abilities in the living room as much as anything. There was always
like with the mothers.
Yeah, I was gonna say in the bedroom, living room.
Yeah, living room. Yeah, definitely living room.
Tony Jefferson once told me a story about Alabama's old offensive coordinator now, Lane Kiffin, back when he was at USC. That would be very interesting. Basically Pete Carroll was recruiting him for a while. He got the sleazy vibe from Carroll, but nothing ever kind of came out. And then Kiffin took over the job, and immediately there was no coyness about it. No, hey, if you talk to this guy, just here, you go to this place, we'll get you taken care of here, here, and here. And he basically said that's why I picked Oklahoma.
1,000% chance. I would love to cheat college football with Lane Kiffin.
What, like be on his staff?
Oh yeah, just cheat our
be
ass
the guy
off
that delivers the bags.
Yeah, do whatever, man.
Eddie, is your plan to just be gone by the time you get caught? Just be on to the next school,
or just get caught and go to the NFL for a couple years and come back. I mean, that's basically all you have to do nowadays.
I do love I don't know if it was a senator, congressman, whatever, that tried to start tried to make a law in the SEC country that
it was in Mississippi. They were trying to stop this whole Miss thing.
That do keep NCAA investigations at a minimum or something like that.
Of course, it would be in the state of Mississippi.
I know they say if the NCAA is on your campus, you've already lost. The main goal of those compliance departments is to keep NCAA away. Speaking
of Mississippi, Josh, I think that another interesting aspect of the Jacob Phillips looming decision is the decision of Willie Gay, isn't it? And how that affects everything. Because you would think that the narrative has been that they're going to both end up at LSU, when in fact, you look at the rivals' predictions and stuff like that, and I think the latest one had Willie Gay landing at Mississippi State.
Hold on. Dang it. Josh, you there?
I am here now. I got put on hold there, guys.
Jay Tate tried to call me from the Auburn site. I don't know why. He just saw I was on Skype and decided, hey, I'm going to call him.
Yeah, bring him in.
So I didn't know. I'd never had someone call me while we were talking to Josh on Skype. So I think he came on and heard Eddie
SEC
talking
tape.
And then just stopped. And he hung up.
Oh, I hope not. We had great conversations.
We talked about Auburn.
New Orleans.
No, Jay's a good dude. I like Jay a lot. So anyway, look, Jacob Phillips, let's throw this out there. I know, Josh, you thought maybe we could hear something 24 hours or so, or maybe that was Woody's impression. I couldn't remember. And I know you've already said in the podcast earlier, the longer this goes on, the better it is for Oklahoma. Do you see a decision date, a decision time coming on this?
I'll be very surprised if he runs it all the way to signing day. I've heard that it could be today, tomorrow, like it could be very close. My bet is he's going to do it Sunday. And that's not based on anything I've been told. That's just kind of my feel on how he's handled everything. He's going to let LSU do their in-home, which I believe is tonight, but I have not confirmed that. And then going to do OU on Friday, which I do know that is the plan. And then probably sit on it for the weekend and then maybe make an announcement on Sunday. That's my guess of the way Jacob will play this, just because he's the kind of kid that's not going to rush into anything. He didn't want to do anything emotional. That's why everybody was saying, oh, he's going to flip at LSU. Man, I just didn't see that. That's not how Jacob has handled any of this stuff. And, which goes back to Snapgate on the board last weekend, which just that never added up to me, because he's just not a kid that's going to, especially if it's going to be LSU, I think he is going to go above and beyond to make OU feel as good as they can about it. Obviously, OU's not going to be happy, and he knows it no matter what, if it is LSU, there's nothing he can say that's going to stem that.
Okay, I have a question.
I just don't see him being disrespectful.
I have a question real quick. Okay, so the guy put the snap, or a screenshot of the snap, and I think no one ever really understood was the snap real, or was that, or did we determine that was like photoshopped?
I don't think we determined anything. See, I don't Snapchat. I don't know if any of you guys saw it.
Eddie snaps. I snap. I think Joe snaps.
I never saw it.
I never saw the Snapchat, but I saw a screen grab of the snap.
And that's my thing, because I basically came out and said what I just said. That would be really surprising to me, because Jacob hasn't handled stuff that way.
Did Phillips tell you that it was fake?
He flat out told me it's fake. Okay. I sent him a picture of it, and he said it's fake. And that was his exact quote.
Interesting.
So what I'm guessing happened, or at least Jacob's version of the story, would be that, he shot that video. He did the Snapchat thing.
But somebody else put home on it?
Exactly. And I said something along those lines, and I didn't know enough about it, and basically got shouted down by others who were like, oh, no, you couldn't do that. His name's up there in the corner. Well, then, the next morning, someone gets on the board and is like, guys, you can do that anytime. You just save the picture to a memory, and then you can write over it whatever you want to. And he showed an example, because he took that picture, and then he put, just kidding, Boomer Sooner or something on it. And it was below the home, but he can't create a new picture. He can't go back. And so it might have just been Jacob shooting video from around the stadium, and then whoever put the home in there. Now, I don't know. Jacob may have done exactly that thing, decided it was a bad idea and removed it. But he's never been that kid. It wouldn't add up from the fact that, A, he would lie about it. He could just say nothing and ignore it, and he didn't. If what the poster was claiming, he lied. I struggle with that a little bit. Jacob just doesn't strike me as that kid. Secondly, the issue of him, that's how he's going to present to the world that he's going to go to LSU. I mean, nothing about Jacob's recruitment leads you in that direction, that he would do something that kind of sneaky and second, it would be second rate. And that just doesn't strike me as the way Jacob has handled anything about this.
Okay, let's throw this out there, because I'm sure a lot of people have questions, especially guys that aren't subscribers that just listen to the podcast. Okay, so Marvin Wilson, it's obvious over the last couple of days, OU continues to try and put the full court press on. You had Gerald McCoy, Tommy Harris tweeting at him. I just thought I'd ask you, if it's not LSU, would you be surprised on signing day with Marvin Wilson?
Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say I'm 100%, but I'm about 80% it's going to be LSU. There's way too much smoke. Even when you talk to people around the other staffs, everybody's kind of saying, well, we got to beat LSU. Well, when every school thinks it's the same school, that says something. And I think you can't ignore the Ed Orgeron connection. Obviously, the guy that recruited Marvin for most of his recruitment is now the head coach. So Marvin doesn't just have the defensive line coach as his buddy. He's got the head coach as his buddy. And that's now it's not anybody's fault. It's not something you could have foreseen. It's a nice break for LSU.
Yeah, because if Orgeron had been the head coach the entire time, he wouldn't have been able to have as much contact as he had.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Josh, I was shocked when Herman left Houston to go to Texas. Marvin's got a relationship with Herman already. He, at that point, was considered to like Texas a lot. I thought, okay, that relationship might take off, and it seemed nothing happened. It seemed like that completely fizzled. How surprised were you that Wilson and Texas didn't take off?
A little bit. It struck me, and I've come to this, I think we've talked about it in the podcast a couple times, when Eddie and I interviewed Marvin after that game, the night before the OU Houston game, And I asked Marvin, hey, you going to the game? And he said, yeah, I want to watch OU, kind of see them. And I said, well, you're going to be watching UH, because I just try to ask about any school that might be involved. And he just kind of was like, oh, yeah, I might check. Like, he didn't act interested at all in U of H. And don't get me wrong, I realize Marvin's getting recruited by all the big boys in U of H, but Ed Oliver just went to Houston the year before. He was the previous, big-time D lineman in Houston. Now Marvin's the next guy. It would have made sense for Marvin to just be like, yeah, I'm kind of giving him a look. But it almost sounded like I'm not interested at all in U of H. And it didn't feel like just because it was Houston. It felt like something else. And almost instantly, when Texas took over, they didn't contact Marvin. It was like they knew the situation. I don't know. It was all just very weird. So I think just looking back on what we know now, maybe I'm not as surprised as I was at the time.
All right, let's head on and talk about some other things that have happened recently in recruiting, most notably Tre Norwood and his commitment. Now, everybody looks at his offer sheets and they say, well, he didn't have any big SEC offers. Arkansas didn't even offer him. But then I think I termed it like he kind of became the last call guy. Like, when you're at the bar and they say it's last call, you got to find the prettiest girl in the room so you can bet her.
Those guys are always the most fun, though.
So Tre Norwood, he was last call guy, though, wasn't he? The most fun.
I think that's fair to say, and I think you also have to give him some credit because, everybody knows now he was the silent commitment that we've been talking about for a week. He was that guy, and he just said, sure, maybe I want to go look. I think what it came down to is I want to go look at one other school, but I'm about 100% you're what I want to do. And so he told OU, and OU trusted it enough to be like, okay, we're walking away from Samuel Barnes. We're walking away from Craig Yeast, or Russ Yeast, excuse me. And so I think he was a little bit of last call, but at the same time, he was smart enough to recognize, at some point the chairs are going to stop turning and I'm going to have to land somewhere. And he knew OU was his best option.
I bet some dude married a last call girl. Like she ended up being fun and not stuck up.
Oh, sure. Chances are that's happened at some point, yeah. Right?
There's no doubt about it.
If you're a scooper and you married a girl from last call, give us a call. We'll give you a free month subscription.
And we want to talk about it.
Have you guys ever seen Whipped with Amanda Peet?
I don't think
ring
so.
A bell.
There's a fat guy, and literally it's like his job to jump on the grenade in the group. Like that's his role. And then he's got a whole speech where he's like, I pulled her pin because he ends up marrying one of the grenades.
That's pretty funny.
It's just
I pulled her pin.
Take it how you get it.
So anyway, but no, I guess I'm trying to make up for making it sound horrible, but look, this was a guy that a lot of people kind of went back in and took a look at and really liked, though, right, Josh?
Yeah, I think there was definitely some growing interest in him. I know just before he announced it, I had gotten some questions from our Notre Dame site. Notre Dame really wanted Tre Norwood, so that's saying something. Obviously that's another big-time program that recruits nationally, so they wanted him. I think in a lot of cases, you get these guys that slip through the cracks. People forget this was Zach Sanchez 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
That no one was that geeked up about. And you took him from Baylor, and next thing you know, Zach Sanchez is an NFL draft pick. Now,
you stole Jordan Thomas from Northwestern, so
yeah, that's another great example. And especially at DB, because there's so much depth of talent, you get a lot of these guys where the top 10 schools, including Oklahoma, are chasing these elite guys. And then they kind of realize, okay, whatever school it is, realizes, okay, we're not going to win this time around. We got to start looking for our next option. Well, then you get these guys that are still really good players. Defensive backs, you can find good DBs. They are out there to be found. It's along the lines where you really need to hit your primary options because the depth pool dwindles pretty fast.
And you brought up Jordan Thomas and Zach Sanchez. Tre Norwood would be more of a Zach Sanchez type, right, in your opinion? He's kind of a smaller guy, better in zone, a ball hawk, whereas Jordan can kind of play more physical style. Am I wrong there?
Oh, I think you're right. I think that's absolutely right. And if they didn't already have a guy like Broyles, it would be interesting to me to see if Norwood would maybe become their nickel guy. Like I think he's very natural, dropping off in a coverage, doing some of that stuff, where I think Justin – though maybe not as blessed athletically as Tre Norwood, because he's not going to be, Tre Norwood's a a chronicled, sub 10.7 guy in the 100 meters. I mean, he can really go. Broyles, I think, has a little more natural man-to-man skills than Norwood does, but he's not quite as athletic. So I think it's kind of interesting to see how that plays out and how Kerry Cooks chooses to use those guys.
How much, Josh, in your expertise, does hips play a factor into that?
Well, now, we could make this real weird. Now, we're going to need some music to kind of come down off one of those special adult videos as I start talking about hips. But as we all know, that, to me, that's where you'd find elite defensive backs, or guys that can turn and run. I talked about you can find defensive backs. You can find zone corners. Those guys, I mean, you want them to be physical, come up, play, run, do those things. But a guy who can legitimately turn and run with an elite receiver, man, those guys, those are not as easy to find. Those dudes are hard to come by. And like I said, Norwood is a guy that's very fluid. And what's interesting to me is when I watch him on tape, I see a guy that's quicker than fast, and yet you see 100-meter times of like 10.55 for him.
Yeah, he doesn't look like Trey Franks or somebody on tape who's just kind of stiff and fast, or Julian Wilson. He's fluid.
Yeah. Now, I admit I don't see 10.55 guy when I watch him on tape, but he looks plenty fast. But what does stick out to me is he is quick. In short areas, he's very quick.
I'm really looking for some sexy music, but I can't find any.
Wow, wow, wow.
I was telling Carrie I listened to some live on the way in to do the podcast today, and I think live is an underrated sexy time music.
The band live.
Right, the band live.
Band live?
Like what song particularly?
The one,
You're getting naughty to Dolphins Cry?
Like, lay me down. That one. That one's a good one. That's what I heard coming in.
Okay.
I'm telling you, listen to tonight. I'm just letting you know.
I love you
like water. There you go.
Oh, that's live.
Yeah.
That feels like this is the first time we've had sex kind of hook up. That doesn't.
That's
feel
not
like,
sexy time, no.
Yeah, you're on the table, like something more aggressive, like not hey.
I thought you were gonna say like I Alone or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
my God, what's wrong with you?
Well, I mean, it's that's not like, well, it's Sunday at 12:30. We better get this in. So that's not one of those songs.
Sorry, I wasn't alive when Afternoon Delight came out.
I don't think I was either.
I don't think I was.
Oh wow!
I know Josh felt.
Good Lord, it doesn't have to sound that bad.
I'm just saying, the 2020 offer sent you for a loop today.
Oh yeah,
I feel like you had to reevaluate things once you saw that.
Yeah. Oh no! As soon as I started getting coaches telling me about a 2020 kid, I was like, man, that's it. That's the official. I'm super old because now. I mean, when I started this, I was like 2 years older than the guys I was covering. And now, literally, we're to the point where these guys weren't alive when I graduated.
All right, so coming down the home stretch, we've got a week to go, maybe less, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. But we talked about, we spent like 35, 40 minutes talking about Jacob Phillips on this podcast. Marvin Wilson, for those that were curious. But let's talk. Coming down, what are you looking for, Josh, in terms of? I'm sure there's some things that that you can't talk about, but should we expect some movement on the defensive line? Should we expect maybe some surprises to pop up here coming into signing day?
I think that there is the possibility of maybe one surprise in there somewhere. I'm not quite ready to put it out there, but there are things. Oklahoma is definitely still running through. They're not just kind of resting on their laurels and going to say, hey, we're going to get who we're going to get here. They are trying to close out on some names. Obviously, I think this weekend, if Oklahoma could be in a situation to land Tyrese Lott, who I think is going to announce on Friday, and I think it's a really good situation for Oklahoma. And then you've got both Taquan Graham and Corey Bethley, a couple of good defensive lineman. Bethley from Katy, Texas, same program that Matt Diamond came from. Taquan Graham, the Texas commitment from Temple, Texas.
I'll send you some sexy time music while you talk about this, by the way.
Okay. So the nice thing is I can talk over it and it doesn't even distract me because I can't hear it. But as far as Taquan Graham and Corey Bethley, I think it's just a question of if Oklahoma were to get, or if both wanted to come, what does Oklahoma do? Can they take both? I don't know. I don't think so. But at the same time, it's going to be pretty tough with OU's defensive line numbers to say no to a quality player like either one of those guys.
Don't say
But
no.
I think Graham's the better option. I think Bethley's possible. I think he's probably likely to stay in the state of Texas. I think he'll end up choosing probably between A&M and TCU. But him leaving A&M last week and not committed's big. And Graham, again, he's been giving OU a lot of positive vibes, has always been very open with me about his interest. So I think OU's got a chance there.
Did anyone pay attention to what Josh was saying?
Probably not. Can Josh even hear that? So he probably doesn't even know.
No.
It's beautiful. Like, I know you guys are doing it, and I'm just like, I don't even have to listen to any of that. I can just roll right through this.
With Bethley, that seems like a pretty interesting situation in that, I think you've said on the board a couple times this week that kind of came out of nowhere, hasn't it? That OU maybe sort of could be a legitimate player for him?
Well, guys, I mean, and I've done this before, and I need to go back and try to find the thing I had on my computer about it. But when you look at the statistics, I couldn't get it out. I don't know what that was about. Of guys that have taken a visit on the last weekend to a school and ended up going to that school, it's pretty staggering. Like, even a lot of upsets within those decisions. So for Oklahoma to kind of have the last chance to really show him something. And Corey Bethley's never been to OU, so they can do a lot of different stuff with him, show him just about anything he wants to see, and there's going to be a lot of flash and glamour to it because it's new to him. With Graham, he's been up before. Oklahoma is just going to try to do all they can to show, hey, we've been with y'all along. This new Texas staff, you don't know what you're getting. It's kind of what we talked about with Jacob Phillips and Marvin. You get to sell that there's stability here. We've got a need for you here. I mean, I think there's absolutely an expectation if Taquan Graham picks Oklahoma that he will be in the two-man rotation or the two deep almost from word go next year. I mean, they see him as that kind of guy, in my opinion. So that's what they're going to sell. And I think with Bethley, Oklahoma knows it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but he's such a good player. It's just kind of one of those things, like I said earlier with the Marvin in-home, why not take the shot?
Yeah, that's why one of the big benefits of building that huge class early, and we've talked about this a few times in the podcast, is they really can focus in now. And that's something that they really haven't had the luxury on before. I remember in the past, what was that weekend where they had like Courtney Gardner and Michael Anoha, and they had like 5, 6, 7 guys in. I think they had
Talking about some legends there.
Yeah, right. And I think
Damian Williams, I think, was in that visit weekend.
And they all committed, every one of them. And that OU's really not in that situation where they're trying to throw out a wide net, even though there were some names in there. But now they can really focus and more have like a scalpel kind of mentality and be more surgical in their approach here.
Well, there's no doubt. I think that if they can keep Jacob Phillips, it is a product of them being so successful early in recruiting.
I'd say so. Yeah. And the fact that they could all focus in on Jacob Phillips like they have. I mean, I would have to think Mike Stoops is going to be there too on Thursday, Friday, or whatever day it is, right?
Oh, absolutely. You'd have to think.
Because he hasn't been there, right?
No, he was there last time.
He can go as often as he wants.
There's
no limitation on that.
That's right. Yeah. People said that they want to be a fly on the wall for that in-home visit. I'd almost rather be – we should do some cyber terrorism and hack into the – Sooner Squad 17's text group. Maybe that's what I'll do today.
Oh, man. Is it on GroupMe?
They always tell you to cover up your camera. How do we do that?
With tape.
Yeah, how do we hack into somebody's camera?
I've been watching Mr. Robot, so I'll start paying more attention.
A couple of those guys, I don't know if I want to see the pictures that they're taking.
No, not the pictures, but you hack into
you can hack in through the camera?
Like, that's what they say. Like, Mark Zuckerberg, like, he covers all of his cameras.
Yeah, that's why I always put mine down. The government.
What they would see would just be...
How is the truther movement handling Donald Trump's presidency so far?
Pretty good.
You staying woke?
Yeah, they're building the wall today. But the good news is Mexicans aren't paying for it. We're paying for it, but we're going to get reimbursed. So it's a good deal.
How are we getting reimbursed?
It's an IOU.
That's just Daddy Don. He'll figure it out. He'll figure it out.
All right, Joe, you can still post. Eddie and Carrie have lost posting rights.
Boom. Would have never thought.
No politics.
No politics on the podcast, you sons of bitches.
That's a surprise victory for me.
That's
yeah, Joe, if there was anybody I thought would go, it was you, buddy.
And let the jokes start. Well, that's not going to make any difference with Murdoch.
Yeah.
Post anyway.
Mike Farrell, that's all he needs to do is drop some political bombs on the board right now, and that thing might just completely melt.
Like Seth Davis, I'm just like, I don't care what your politics are, but just shut up. I don't even know who he works for anymore.
Probably
I literally
Snowflake.
unfollowed Jason Lockenfora.
Yeah,
because it
he's
was
been
just
really
constant.
bad.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about us. Like, look, we're going to joke about politics and stuff every once in a while, but we're not going to get political. That's just not what we're going to do.
Ever.
Not with us, no. I'll do it if you want to talk to me on the streets, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
about it.
we know, Joe.
But no, I don't do it here. You don't hear it
And
on the
it's tough
podcast.
to-
If you're going
Yes,
to talk to Joe,
Joe's-
you better feel the burn. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'd say you looking at Joe, you're kind of like, boy, I wonder where he comes out on the political side of things.
Oh, yeah,
he's
you don't
a
have to
tough
wonder.
guy to figure.
I'm
He's
an
not-
open book.
He's no sort of enigma whatsoever.
You know what you get when you get Joe.
Dirty hippie.
Dirty hippies.
You're multiplying, by the way. I found your doppelganger.
Where
I think I sent that photo out, didn't I? To the
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, a lot of good-looking people emerging.
I saw an Eddie lookalike at Starbucks a few weeks ago. I meant to take a picture, and then it kind of like we were in a situation where it was going to be creepy. There was no way I could like sneak it and it'd be cool, and I wasn't sure if I had my the little noise off as I hit the button. I was like, he's going to hear me, and so I just I ducked out.
Once you get over the fact that you're probably going to get caught out by somebody taking a picture of them, it's much easier just to take the picture.
So you've been called out?
I've never been called out, but I've definitely had I've stopped and taken a picture of somebody at a intersection and stuff, and I've had them notice I'm taking a picture and just taking a picture of you, fool. Doesn't matter. Joe, I guess we can take this moment to maybe hit on some Trae Young news.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I know that was kind of a big deal around these parts here. I guess within the last week after Rayford Young came out on Twitter and said that
Brilliant move, by the way.
just a brilliant move by everybody all the way around.
And by the way, I read that Clay Horning article as soon as he tweeted it, and I thought, man, that's kind of harsh for high school.
Yeah.
But then I think I read it 2 more times by the end of the week, and after the 3rd time reading, I was like, that's fair. That's not that critical or harsh. I mean, he is questioning, I think Trae Young's decision making, but I think that's about as far as you go. He's not saying he was a bad person.
It's like the number 15. He's the top 15 player in the country.
Number 14.
and that's the probably the first time that somebody's ever been critical of him. I mean,
They lost to a crummy team when that article came out. That's what happens when you lose to crummy teams. Now, sometimes that criticism might, in your opinion, be not fair or too tough or whatever. But I don't get how going. And for those of you who missed it, Trae Young's dad tweeted out.
Rayford Young
quoted that on Twitter and said, "Time to be honest, OU fans. These 2 writers will be the reason my son can't go to school here. It's been 4 years of this," which he promptly then deleted a few minutes after that.
And after everybody had screenshotted it.
Right.
there's no better move than the tweet and then immediate delete.
Yeah, because
It's everybody saw that.
they don't understand how the internet works. But, if you go to Kansas, which most people believe that's what Trae has between OU and Kansas, it's not going to get any better. If you lose,
You go 1 for 10 against Kansas and shoot half-court 3-pointers, you're going to get roasted.
right, that's the way it goes. And I think that it was just a thin-skinned moment, and it was petty. And I think I think both sides kind of understood that quickly. And they met yesterday, and from what I'm told, that meeting was initiated by the Young family. They went to OU and said, "Hey, we want to talk about things." And now what I found interesting was I heard that, there wasn't anything to smooth over. Oh, okay, well then why didn't the meeting happen? What were you talking about? So obviously there was something that had to be smoothed over, but it seemed like both sides have gotten through that. And I'm told that Oklahoma doesn't even believe that they're behind. They still believe that they're going to get Trae. Now might not share that optimism after seeing that tweet, but the belief is that was more of an emotional outburst by Trae's dad and kind of more of a play, like a move that our Papa Donnie would do to try to bargaining chip. And
I have to think, even though the Sooners have had some rough losses here in the last 2 games, have not been pretty, in the way that they've lost them, double overtime to Iowa State, and then it blown a. Did they ever have a big lead against Texas?
5-point lead with
Maybe
19
5
seconds
with 19
left. But
seconds
yeah,
left. But they didn't blow a 19-point lead. But the thing is, you see Christian Doolittle, you see Cameron McGusty, and I have to think Trae Young looks at that and says, man, this is a good young nucleus of players. I could really fit in here.
I could be the guy that puts him over the top.
Not to mention that, having Jordan Woodard and not having Jordan Woodard, he can see how much better that makes the team.
Oh, absolutely. And Oklahoma, believes that they have this perfect package for Trae set up. They're not even really looking at any other point guard right now. They have a one spot left in their class. It's for a point guard. Jordan Woodard's going to be leaving, and they're focusing solely on the local 5-star point guard. And he could come into a situation that he knows is going to be trending in the right direction. Lon Kruger has had a positive experience at every college program he's been to. So if you look at what he's going to come into, this season, go nowhere but up with nothing but young players. I mean, you lose Jordan Woodard.
They're getting better for the most. I mean, Christian James is the only guy you can point to and say he's not getting better. I mean, maybe Kadeem Latin a little bit, but what Christian Doolittle? I mean, my God.
29 points.
He's going to be one of the best players in this conference if he continues on this
McCuistion scored a double-digit points for his 7th straight game. He had a career high, like 23 against Texas. So those guys are going to be sophomores next year. Sophomores. And so if Trae Young comes into that situation, I really think that Oklahoma is going to be a team that could compete for a conference title. That's how good he is, and that's how good that young talent is. The crazy thing that Oklahoma's kind of put the situation they put themselves in is if Trae doesn't come to OU, then it's Jordan Shepard and Darian Strong running the point, and
you put yourself in. You've gone all in. You've gone all in on Trae Young.
So I mean, there's confidence there in Norman, and the confidence from Kansas side tends to be, well, we're Kansas, Bill Self's trying, so we're going to get him. But the side from Oklahoma, they think that they've made a strong pitch, that they have everything they've needed to. They've crossed all their T's and dotted all their I's to sell Trae on coming here. And I would say this, I did also hear, which he said he's going to have a December decision and then a January decision. I am hearing that Oklahoma is expecting the decision to come sometime in February, pretty soon into the month. So
good stuff.
We're coming down the wire here.
You know, and Rayford Young, he has tweeted, and this was within the 4 days ago. I guess it was the night of the Texas game. Just talking about how good Cam McGusty is. Said he's going to be a player, great feel for the game. So I mean, it's not all bad if you want to.
At least he's watching OU games,
yeah,
and commenting on them. Yeah,
and
I think he kind of came out to certain people that he does talk to, and you did get the sense like he regretted ever saying that, and that basically things weren't dire for OU because of that.
I mean, I've heard a theory which makes sense to me that tweet almost suggests that he is going to go to OU and he's attempting to kind of set the market ahead of time. He's letting the press know kind of what he expects for Trae ahead of time. Why else would he kind of criticize them if he was going to leave? So I think that's something to consider too, that why would he do that if he wasn't going to be worried about the coverage in the future?
We will not meet those standards. I'm sorry.
So, yeah. I mean, look, Buddy Hield, Blake Griffin, if you're a great player at Oklahoma, you're going to get overwhelming positive vibes compared to any criticism.
Oklahoma's had more Naismith winners than Kansas has. Kansas had one, it was Danny Manning. OU's had Blake Griffin and Buddy Hield. So Oklahoma can provide
Suck on that, Allen Fieldhouse.
Right. Oklahoma can provide a spotlight. It can do that. I mean, if you're the guy and you come to Oklahoma, you're the guy.
Take that, Fog Allen. Guess what? You're dead, son.
The Danny Manning one probably stings the most, though. I think that.
Yeah, that was my childhood right there. 88.
I was one.
What depends on the month? I might not have. No, so if it was March of '88, I was not alive yet.
All right, your attempt to make me feel old and Josh old, it has finally worked today.
Is Josh back?
Josh, you're with us, right?
I'm here.
We still have enough basketball.
He's playing with his dog.
There was one thing that I saw on the board that I figured we could talk about was the article out of the Chicago Tribune this morning, which I thought was great. I think Teddy Greenstein wrote it, and talking about a guy that I think a lot of people, if you don't remind him who he is, don't have any idea who he is. But Eric Swenson and kind of his road to get to Norman after pretty much being stabbed in the back by Jim Harbaugh. I thought it was a great article, all angles.
I need to go read it. Yeah, I haven't had a chance.
I really liked how they kind of laid everything out and let you decide at the end. But just kind of what were your thoughts on that and where everything went after that? It sounds like Eric Swenson has a chance to be a player here. He's been a guy that's been mentioned by Lincoln Riley. But sorry, Josh, go ahead.
No, you're fine. My first thought is I like that you went into that. I mean, because that story was all about presenting the facts and then letting you decide. And what I liked, Eddie, is you went in there with no preconceived notions of Jim Harbaugh. You went in there just open to the picture. But no, I mean, this is one of those things, and I thought the story kind of touched on it. Man, this stuff happens. Players get processed, and coaches process players, and recruits decommit. It happens. Like, I don't know why people end up getting mad about either one. They are just realities, and on a singular level, yeah, it sucks. But like we talked about last week when we were talking about the Connecticut kid, why do you want to go somewhere you're not wanted anyway? My only problem is if the information isn't relayed correctly. Like, I understand Michigan at some point in there, they were trying to decide, hey, are we going to have a spot for this guy? Do we still want this guy? Can we get a better player than him? Like, I understand all of those things, but by the middle of January, you had known for a while that you weren't taking that kid, and you need to relay that information. You need to just be upfront and say, hey, no, we're just not going to take you. We don't mean to leave you in this bad spot. We'll help you in any way we can. But I felt like they just kind of washed their hands and were like, yeah, we're done with you, man. No, best of luck. So, and again, I thought his coach talked about it when he was saying, oh, we're going to, the coach was saying, oh, Harbaugh was obviously leaking all this information, that he was lazy and didn't work hard, and he's having to fight that off while trying to find new places for his kid to land. And that's tough. That's a little, to me, that's when it gets to be unfair. Yeah. You don't have to shoot the kid down. Just let him know, hey, we don't have a spot for you. We're really sorry. We'll help you. We'll put your name out there to some places. Don't run him down as well. That's just not right.
Yeah. Well, and I think almost, I felt like after reading it that, I think there's obviously still some hate for Michigan. And I loved how they talked about him watching the Orange Bowl in the team hotel down in New Orleans and stuff. But I almost feel like in 10, 15 years, and say he has a career at OU, maybe in the professional ranks and stuff, I almost feel like he's going to look back and say, I needed that ass kicking my senior year, even though it was really tough to accept at the time. Maybe I needed that to get my head screwed on straight before I went to college. I don't know.
There are kids like that every year that end up, kind of having that chip on their shoulder, and they end up going out to try and prove, to everybody, hey, I'm good enough. I think a great example is a guy that's kind of a storyline today, Eric Stryker. Got largely overlooked by all the regional and local schools. No, you took him, and the guy went out and pretty much played pissed off for 4 years.
Yeah, but then Eric Stryker is another good example of how there's limitations to that, because that worked through college, but then he reached his wall. So there's always a scale to this. There's always, at some point you have to have it, but then there's also another part of the equation where you got to also kind of have the drive too, because you can't make it in that sport and that business without a drive. I was going to say, which brings me to the guy that kind of has the best combination, I think you could say, of anybody to have talent and drive that in the Rivals era is Adrian Peterson. And we were talking kind of before the show, Josh, what that would probably be the most signature signing day for OU in their history, landing the number 1 overall player. Do you remember what that day was like? Because you were there, right?
I was there at his announcement, and I can say what's funny is looking back on that is Adrian Peterson signed with OU, and our board was lamenting and angry about the loss of I think either a low 4-star or a high 3-star cornerback that had been committed to OU that flipped to A&M and did it theatrically, like burned an OU hat or something during his announcement. Like it was a whole thing at his high school. A kid from Duncanville, if I remember right, and I'm going to blank on his name right now, but that tells you how much this kid ended up doing and how much it ended up mattering. And OU fans weren't talking about the fact that they just signed the number 1 quarterback and the number 1 running back in the country. They were worried about this guy. I mean, that's just the way recruiting is. It's never – people forget about the ones you had. Like, nobody was talking about how great Jacob Phillips was until they thought they might lose him. And now this, really great player, but an inside linebacker is being treated like he's Adrian Peterson. And Jacob's a great player. He absolutely is. Is Oklahoma 2 wins better next year because of Jacob Phillips? Probably not. So it's funny how that turns. But as I've deviated from the story, yes, was there at Adrian Peterson's announcement. It was one of the most chaotic things I've ever been a part of. I was driving down the day before. I get to about Purcell, and literally the transmission in my truck blows out. I'd never had a car problem. I get towed all the way back to Oklahoma City, had to rent a car through a friend because I wasn't 25. I wasn't applicable at that point to rent from Enterprise or any of the other major companies. So I had a friend who was a diffie, and he ran a lot, and so he got me a car. I end up in a Ford Aerostar driving all the way down in my minivan to Palestine, Texas. Get there at like 1:30 in the morning. His announcement's at like 7:30 the following morning. And get there, and we go through the whole thing. It was my first time to meet Adrian in person, really, and get to talk with him. He damn near broke my hand. He still has the strongest handshake I've ever been around. And we walk outside of the high school, and, I'm fixing to leave, and he and I are just kind of small talking, and he sees me head out to my car and promptly makes fun of my minivan. So it was not my shining moment as a SoonerScoop.com reporter.
That maybe is why you have the truck you have. That moment with Adrian Peterson, you said, damn it, I'm never going to have this again. I'm going to have the biggest truck.
I'm going to have a monster truck.
Just waiting to run into him down in Houston during the off season.
I actually ran into him last spring, at a Houston Arts Festival event. He was out there. I was with my wife doing the married guy thing, and he was out there. Actually, also saw Romeo Crennel at the same thing. It was a very weird kind of football arts thing. I don't know what that was about that year, but so yeah. Ran into him, and I didn't have the truck at that time, but if I would have dragged him out there and make him, give me credit for it. Look, I got a big truck, dude.
You'd be like, I got like 9 of those.
Yeah. He's like, oh, that doesn't have 47s on it? Well, whatever, dude.
All right, that's good stuff. Great stuff on Trae Young, great stuff on Adrian Peterson. A lot of Jacob Phillips talk today, which I think is great. We'll be back again next week. We'll figure out exactly what day. Signing day is coming up on Wednesday, so we probably won't have time to do a podcast that day. But we'll get you guys all the schedule about what we'll be doing, where we'll be, that kind of thing coming up next week and over the weekend. But want to remind you guys, go check us out on iTunes. Give us a rating if you don't mind. Appreciate everyone who's done that so far. It's been a while since we got a rating, though. So go on there and tell us what you think about the podcast. Tell us how you think make it better. We'd love to get your feedback, or just email any of us. I know it's everybody enjoys the podcast. We had a record crowd last time. Hopefully we'll do the same this time as well. I want to remind you guys also, it doesn't just end with signing day. Sign up to Soonerscoop.com, become a member of the boards, because spring football is going to be coming quick after signing day. Obviously, a lot of really cool stuff to be following there. The running back battles, backup quarterback battle that'll really get underway is Austin Kendall was the backup last year, but now Kyler Murray will be in the mix there. We'll get to see Kyler Murray kind of starts maybe looking at some alternate positions to help out the team as well.
I will see Kyler Murray on Friday afternoon. OU's first baseball practice.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. And he's playing baseball, so that'll be interesting.
I am going to go out there on Friday, though, so look for some stuff on that. All
right, cool. And, of course, OU basketball. Look, I know it's not been a great season, but I would say keep watching this team. Christian Doolittle, fantastic. Cameron McGusty. We'll see if Christian James could ever get it together. I would just like to see Kadeem Latin kind of develop a little bit more. I mean, he's had some big blocks, but he's shooting from the free throw line a little bit better. And he does hit some jumpers every once, but he's still kind of the same guy he was last year.
Jimani McNeese might be the post guy to watch
McNeese
there.
is fantastic.
He has a high ceiling there.
I know Fran Fraschilla is really high on him, thinks he has an NBA future, or at least a pro basketball future. He's talked about that a lot. So thanks to Eddie Radosevich and Joe DuVall here in studio. Thanks to Josh McCuistion back at his home base. That'll do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40. We'll talk to you guys maybe before, probably after signing day, a little bit next week as well. So thanks, guys, for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Unofficial 40.